Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. We're going to continue some of our beginning lessons here today. I'm going to paint a bird with probably some daisies. We haven't really done those yet. You know, daisies are one of the first flowers that I learned how to paint, and they teach you a lot because you can learn how to do what I call rock and roll them, how to turn them and make them go different ways by how you stroke the petals and stuff, and we'll get into that. But before we do, this is going to be a really good study of the neutrals. We're going to go inside the wheel this time, and how do we use our 6-color set to paint the neutrals. And the neutrals are some of your most important colors, guys. They're the most important colors, and on the wheel, really, for what I do, and we need to learn how to control them. But we're going to paint this bird. We're going to paint today we're going to paint this little white-throated sparrow. We'll put some daisies with it. This is one that I did a couple years ago. Well, I did it quite a few years ago. I did it 6 years ago. I did this one and put the bees on it and twist and turn daisies and casual painting and stuff like that. And there's a bunch of different ways you can get all kinds of different looks, not only with the type of brush, how you use your paint and the technique, but what we're going to talk about today too is both the short handle and the long handle brushes, okay? So when I did that one over there with the little vireo and the daisies, Northern Parla with the daisies, get the birds right here, what I did was use the short handle. Now, you'll see a lot of lessons that I do in the Painted Symphony. Like I said, I got over 500, where I paint down. I paint the birds down. I use kind of an angled easel, and I paint down, and I use a short handle brush, and I get in there, and that allows me to get a lot of control, and I can really paint a super realistic bird that way, very easy, because my hand is down here on the closer down to the ferrule. My palm is resting on the surface, and I can get real steady hand and really get a lot of detail in it. Lately, in the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot on the up here on the easel. Now you can paint both, that's your choice. I use the easel because I use the long handle brushes. My hand goes back further on the handle here. That keeps the tip of the brush lighter, that keeps your movements lighter and more casual, and so you get more casual edges. Now you can still do a lot of detail work, and this is one reason why I do like the easel. You still can do a lot of detail work if you get you one of these. Now in old days we called these maul sticks, and we put and the one that I have has a leather tip on it, and you rest it on the easel, and you come down and you rest your hand, and that's how you can get it down. So I can move it in, encroach in, and do little detail work like this. Pretty easy, okay? Pretty easy. Or I can step back, make the tip more versatile. And so lately, in the last couple of years, I've been using a lot of the long handle brushes, but you can also have lots and lots of lessons with short handles, okay? So you'll see that, and you'll see that we have both, carry both. Same bristle, same everything about the brush that's in the long handle or short handle, and that's up to you to decide what you like to do, okay? All right, so I have my 6 colors out here, my Hansa, my Naphthol Red Light, my Phthalo Blue, my red, violet, black, and white. We're gonna go inside the wheel this time. So the bird is made up of a real toned orange, almost like a burnt sienna type of color. Toned burnt siennas, oranges, yellows, and then a lot of neutrals in here. And of course, when we go to paint daisies and stuff like that, whenever we do those, we can use a large variety of these neutral colors in here to get that. And I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways. We'll set this one back up over here. I'll show you a bunch of different ways to go inside that wheel. That's the wheel we made last time. And so we'll get going with it, okay? All right, so the actual brushes that I'll be using is the same ones that I painted the last one with. I have a number 8 or a 10. This is a number 10 flat. This is my 3/4 inch that I use for any kind of backgrounds or so. My favorite birding brush that I use if I want to get a lot of detail, I don't use it on all the lessons, is the number 4 round. This is a number 4 long-handled round. You can see that super point on that, and so if you want to do detail work, you can use that. This is going to be your choice. I do like a smaller flat. You could use a flat, or there's filbert sets out there. You can get a filbert. They make slightly different marks. I've painted for years with a filbert, and then I flipped over to a flat. And now I go back and forth between them quite a bit because they do make a slightly different mark, but they're the same size of the brush there. Or you can also get a smaller one if you want. This is all up to you. And all of our hands are different. You size the brush in a good way. A lot of people say, well, how do you know what size of brush to use? I try, whenever I'm going to paint an area, or let's say we're going to come in here on this bird and we're going to paint this kind of color, what we call a passage, this kind of color that's in here, okay? I size the brush so I can do it efficiently with as few strokes as possible. I usually don't like to make a mark or make an area, put in a color with more than 3 strokes, because then it starts to get stiff. So, you know, like if I'm going to look at that particular area there, I can come in here doing this and go 1, 2, 3 and really cover that area. Most likely put that mark in with like 2 strokes of the number 4. So a number 4 is a real good brush for me to use on this particular bird for some of those areas. If you make a larger bird, then you go up. So somewhere 3 or less strokes to get in, a size of a leaf or a flower or something like that. That's what you'll want to do. I like to paint the daisies with a slightly larger brush. Okay, so I can try to get that petal with 1, maybe 2 strokes, but I do like a larger brush like I told you before, because I can, you know, like if a number 4, you know, if I put a number 4 here and I make a stroke or a mark, what we call a mark with a number 4, I can come in with that larger brush and just turn it slightly sideways and make pretty close that same width of mark, just by how I turn and use my brush. So a larger brush, and this is what you'll find the masters in the really casual styles, the impressionists and stuff that I really like to study, they always went with as large a brush as possible, and then they turn it and twist it and use corners to get different sizes, rather than going to a small brush that causes you repetitive strokes. And repetitive strokes, repetitive marks, are going to make your painting look stiff. So that, remember that. Always remember that as we learn. Okay, so let's go inside the wheel. First, we have our pigment wheel here. We're going to take our bird that we're going to paint here, and then we're going to just kind of analyze our colors a little bit. Let's just do a little bit of color analysis here. Okay, so what do we have? Right in through here, we have an orange. Okay, let me move this out here a little bit so we can see, and maybe move this over a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we have an orange. And an orange is usually a lot of yellow and a little bit of red here is going to give you that orange. So there's an orange. Well, that's way too bright than what he has on him there. We can see that right away. Hopefully you can all see that. So what we have to do is take this orange and go inside the wheel. So how do you go inside the wheel? There's a couple of different ways. You always look, your first kick is go directly across to the wheel, across the wheel here, over to its complement here. So as we're going to paint this bird, the tiniest little bit of blue over here will start to tone this down here. But if it starts to go just a little bit of a greenish cast to it, then you have to get rid of that. How do you get rid of that? Couple of ways. So what's the opposite of green? Is red. So if it starts, so what happened here is my orange started to go like this, down towards my green. So I need some red to pull it back up. So I can, if I'm increasing that, I can increase the red and pull this right back up to this kind of color here, and you can see that color is starting to get a little closer to what we're going to have on that, on the bird, but it still needs to be a little darker. And I always find when I'm working like the bird that's right here, some of these colors that are right up here, see, it's more along the line, not green, it's more along the line of a red or to a violet. And so I like to take in that bird, I look at that orange, does it go kind of greenish or is it going kind of violet color? And it's actually going kind of violet color. So I take this orange and you can start to move it. Matter of fact, you can just take almost like a little, this is our red violet, which is right here. And we add a little bit of blue to it, just a bit to it here. But you start to add that, and that's where you're going to find those colors right there. So you can see that it's not really a greenish one. It is a violet one. See the color there now? So what we're going to have is our orange, which is mostly yellow, a little bit more yellow. You make your orange. And then you're going to touch a little bit of the red violet with a tiny bit of the blue here. And that is going to give you these beautiful tones of your bird. Do you see those? Okay. So it's good for you. And as you progress through painting, okay, you'll be able to see that even more. Your eye will become, like I told you last time, your eye will become attuned just like your ear is in music. Your eye will become in tune to see, is it an orange that is going to lean violet, or is it an orange that's, as it's neutralizing, it's going to lean to the greenish side? Because as this is coming in, it can slowly track this way, or it can slowly track this way. Burnt sienna, and some of you would say, oh yeah, that's very much like a burnt sienna. The bird there is very much, has some of the colors of burnt sienna. Well, burnt sienna sits right up in here. So it's tracking slightly to the violet side, okay? So if I'm gonna go really, really dark, you know, and you have your other choice. Let's take this one more way. Okay, so if I take my orange, because we have black, okay? Black can take us in to the wheel as well. I can leave my orange just a little bit reddish, and I can add a tiny bit of black. Where's black? Black is right here. It's going to take it in almost all the way here. And you can see the difference here. This little bit of black, it's very close, very, very close to getting it over towards the violet. Is not as much as if I take it over here slightly to the greenish side or something like that. If I add the blue, if I add this blue to this orange and I start to take it here, you can see it goes just a little bit here to the greenish side, see? Now, if I'm painting something, we'll take it really to the greenish side there. If I'm painting something here and I want to get a lot of interest. Let's say I'm painting orange flowers or something like that. I can lean my orange to the green. I can lean my orange to the violet. I can use black as a basis to pull it in. And then so I can take that black and then I can cool that black and change that black by adding a little bit of violet to it. And you get all of those beautiful tones. You're pulling colors into the wheel. You can pull them violet. You can pull them green. You can pull them straight in. There's all different kinds of ways, and that's the beauty of the neutrals. And then, of course, you add white to any of these, you'll vary it even more. You start to add white to this. Let's add white to this, just a little bit of white, right to that one with the violet that we make, and you're going to see all of those colors right there underneath him. And I can even grab some of this with a little bit of black, even slightly greenish in here. Grab some of this, and you'll see as I gray out, grab even some of this violet, a little bit of black. And if you don't know, you just mix it all together. And that does it. And you'll see all those tones, all those colors right underneath him. This is a tone right in there that's right along his back right there. Okay. This violet-y kind of color and this kind of tone right in here. This gray is right in there. That will actually show you that that's more of a violet inside there. And, you know, it's, when you're first learning, it's hard. Let's take a little black. Let's take a little violet. Just violet and black. And now I got a toned red violet. And I start lightening this just a bit here. You're going to see those colors right there. See? So you're going to see, you know, if I lighten that up, you're going to see those tones right there. That's that color that's right there. See? And so the violets, working the color into the wheel, whether you're working yellow that's greenish, whether you're working a yellow that goes violet, or an orange that's greenish, an orange that goes violet, or you vary that violet, that black and violet. They're, you know, subtle, tiny little differences are going to, these are all called the neutrals. These are what are going to really give your painting that extra life, that extra energy. It's not just black and white getting neutral inside the wheel. It can be violets, yellows, oranges. It can be all different kinds of versions of it. And painting paintings and learning how to vary that is what's going to add you to interest. The neutrals are some of the most important colors on your wheel, okay? All right, so we're going to practice this, and it's going to take practice. And, you know, like I say with everything, just like it is with painting, learning the technique of painting, just like it is learning the technique of drawing, you have to teach your eye to see the colors. You have to teach your eye to see the tone. So, you know, I always tell my students, paint it through once, paint it through again. And so if you painted it through once and you took orange and blue and a little red to make that, paint it the second time going through it slightly different. Take it through violets or take it through greens, and start seeing, letting your eye see the difference between those tones. That's how you learn, okay? You don't just learn by, oh, I painted that lesson once. Paint it again, paint it again, paint it again, and learn how to do it, okay? Learn different ways of making those neutrals, because that's going to help you. Okay, so this is an 11 by 14 board, and I have my bird over here. He's all set up. And one of the things I do when I set up the bird and stuff that I'm going to paint here is that I take him the same size as my photo that I have here, so that if I get myself into trouble, I can sit there and I can take my ruler here and I can look across at his eye and see. So if I have his wing something wrong or something like that, I can look at, you know, that particular part of him there and see if something is off. The other thing that I recommend when you're starting to draw is I use a lot of calipers too, so that my guy here is exactly the same size as this one over here. So if I'm teaching myself to draw and learning how to do things, if I can sit there and say, okay, his beak is that wide, and oh yeah, maybe I'm off with my beak. So when I starting my sketching and stuff like that, that's how I do it. And you know, I talk to you a lot more about that in some of the other videos. And I have a bunch of different calipers that I use here. This one is really nice because I can move the pencil up and I can actually make marks for the width and stuff that I use. So I use calipers a lot. I use them a lot in portraits and stuff. But for beginners, okay, I suggest that you do this. And this is that plastic that we use. You can get it at Dick Blick or Amazon or something like that. And you take a marking pen, a permanent marking pen, and you take off the main lines of your bird like this. And then you can use, we got it over here, you can use a transfer paper. This is a specialized transfer paper for doing this. And then you can just set it down and transfer your bird. When you're beginning, it's nice to do this because, you know, when you're studying composition, you can move your bird around and see, well, what position on the board do you want the bird? Do you want him to be there, this way, or this way? And there's a lot of lessons I do on composition, but this allows you to see the bird and how you're going to put the bird up. And then if you run into problems, you can always take this and you can always take this and put it back over your painting like I've showed you in other things and see where those problems are, okay? Those are all really great things to do. We want to learn how to sketch eventually, because when you get into a painting and your pattern's gone, your eye has to develop to see the sketch. But you can use that way to help you as you're learning and still make beautiful paintings. The goal here is to always make beautiful paintings, whether you're a beginner and whether you've been painting 20 years or whether you've been painting 35, 40 years like I have. The goal is to make beautiful paintings. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make a beautiful painting. And when I sit there and I'm going to sketch something now, I like to use a carpenter's pencil, and you can just lightly see my lines there. I make a circle and a circle. I divide his body up into it's an oval, excuse me. You see the oval, and then you see the kind of oval that's here, and that's where I start, and that's where I start to draw. And I can put those lines on. And I use, a lot of times I'll use an angle that I have here, and then I turn around and I hold it at that same angle and I'll put that line down. And that's very quick, and that helps you develop your eye for the drawing. There's a lot of wonderful drawing videos on YouTube that you can watch. I suggest you watch and learn how to start to sketch. But we're going to do a painting now, okay? So we're going to do that. So this is an 11 by 14 board, and what I did is I made a neutral color here, and I made it slightly a greenish yellow. So I took black and yellow and then a little bit of red, into it, but left it this ever so slightly greenish. It's hard to tell because it's so gray, it's so neutral. Lightened it up here to about a value 7 or so. So if I hold the value up underneath there, you see it's about a value 7. It is not as light as an 8. It's not as dark as a 6. It's about a 7 here, okay? So that's what I did there with that one. And I have this beautiful little oak frame that I got for it for $6. So I thought that that matched his colors pretty nice. And so that's what I'm going to do. We're going to have some fun, okay? All right, let's get into this now. Let's go in and start right in by the bird right up in here. We'll do some major blocking in of some of the areas. And I might even just, I think I'll start out with, you could start out with any kind of brush that you want and put this one in and rinse out that black there. This is my number 4 flat. I'm going to start there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out. Now, normally when I paint them, I like to get into the face and stuff as soon as possible. But I'm going to come into the bird and I'm going to start looking for an undertone. Now, an undertone is what do you see? Where do you see inside of here? And I see kind of this, it's almost this color that's right here as an undertone of the bird. So what I'm going to do is take some of my orange here. I'll mix up some orange, and I love to constantly mix, especially when I'm with the neutrals. I like to constantly mix. Now, if you want to keep this wet, which I don't worry about, you can poke in some extender here, and that'll help keep this wet. I don't worry about that too much because I love to mix, and I love my paintings to change. So I love to constantly mix. So now let's just go simple. Let's just go here with some black, maybe a bit of white in here, and we'll get this kind of grayish undertone, kind of grayed orange undertone that is pretty close to what I'm seeing up under here, maybe a little bit more. I'm just going to come close. And so, if I'm looking for a tone, say I'm looking in here for a tone. If I come here or come here, that's fine. And then as I get more tones down, I'll get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. But, you can come over and you can put a little bit of it on there knowing that that's going to dry just a touch darker here. You can see I'm just ever so slightly greenish yellow, so a tiny bit of red or even a red violet might even be a little bit better. A tiny bit into that will help me get just a bit closer there to that particular tone, that particular color here, and that will come. So I'm going to take basically an orange, a little bit of black, a little bit of violet, and some white, and make it right up here. And value-wise, I think that's pretty good to start this bird out. Value-wise, when you look at this, I'm really kind of on a 7, but it's going to go down, it's going to dry down to a 6 when it's done here. And what I'm going to do is just step back here, and I'm just going to push a little bit of that tone right down here into my bird, okay? So we'll just drop some of that in, and I like to do this, blur the edges a bit there. Okay, now that tone will change, this will change. This is just what we call the undertone. This is the beginning of the painting. Now, when you're going to paint a bird, see where my hand is on my brush? I'm way back here. And what I want to do is use what we call contour strokes. Now, there's an area right here. This is called his mantle. But there's an area right here that's really important because this is what's going to cause his head to turn. And so the feathers on this side are going to come in this way like this. The feathers on this side are going to pull down. And that's going to make his turning head. So even though you may be using the same color here, and what you do is you follow what we call the contours of the body as you're putting them in. Don't do a big long stroke. Do smaller contour following strokes here. So as I come up around his head, I will start up this way. Then his feathers are going to round. His whole head is going to round. Small marks coming down this way, and coming right down towards the point of his beak here. So I'll follow, and this one is very important. This angle to this angle. So cross and down. That's what's going to make his whole body turn, okay? So now I have a bit of an undertone onto that one. I think I'm going to push just a bit real quick of that undertone up under here, maybe down his tail a bit. Very loose here. Just push some of that tone around in there. Now, once I get that first identity of that tone on, I'm going to go a little darker. And we said he's a darker, more towards the violet. We can even hit a little bit more reddish if we want. So we have our orange. We're going to go a darker violet and red this time. And violet and black. You could add a touch of blue. All of these work in here. As you get these darker tones. I want to go a little bit more violet here on him. This is a beautiful darker, this is that darker tone that you see on him right in there, okay? So you look at this. Now, if you want it, if you want to get it like a little bit more burnt sienna, then you would increase the orange into that, and you'll get that darker, more burnt sienna look to that color, okay? But I like if I'm working with shadows to be slightly cool, so this is slightly warm. So I always had, this is your coolest color. This is a very warm color, so adding that to anything is very warm. Adding this cools it. Shadows are cool, so I'm going to head here to this cooler kind of color that we see here, and I'm going to add that darker tone, and I'll probably go a little darker later. I'm going to try to do it with just as few strokes as possible, just to add. Let's just blush a little bit of this. Lift the hand, pressure on your brush, and just blush a little bit right into there. Okay, and we're going to do this tone again, but let's just get a feeling of this tone coming down here. Where do you see that? Right, that little band on his head. There's a little bit of a band of it right here and towards his eye, right in there, okay? And, you put it where you see it. So he's got his big long, what are called his flight feathers, his primary and secondaries and stuff, and then you have coverts that cover this area, and we see some dark in there. And you don't have to be perfect. Don't be perfect right now. Just start finding some of these colors, and as we get painting, we'll identify a little more and a little more. I might put a few streaks of this right in here. I am one that just loves to paint the tones and then slowly refine the tones, getting it closer and closer and closer to the bird, okay? And each time I paint a bird, I'll do it a little bit different. And so I'm going to put a few little down marks here. What do you see? And painting birds, painting animal fur is a great way even to learn how to paint flowers, because it teaches you how to look for the movement within that mark. Okay, so we're going to have this for his little shoulder right there. Okay, and so now we could touch a little more black, maybe a little more red, just a tiny touch of blue, make that mark color just a touch darker. And let's just add a little mark of that right in there that you see there. See, just add a little mark of it that you see. You might see a whisper or so of some of that right in there. Okay, let's add a little touch of this right into some of these coverts. We can do this again. Just start to take the bird a little bit to what you see. Now, what I also like to do right away, right from the beginning, is get in there on that eye. Now, I'm not going to do, I usually will make you paint with the corner of the number 4. That's what I like to do. I won't do that this time because we're just learning. So I'm going to take my number 4 and I'm going to take a little black, and I like my oranges and those colors, and I'll mix that all together. So it's not pure black. I never paint with pure black. I don't like to paint with pure black. I like it slightly, when you see me paint other birds with that, I like a sienna, a burnt sienna kind of color to go down first. And so I'm going to come in here, just lean my hand on my little stick here, so I'm really careful, and I'm just going to tap. Don't make a circle. Just tap in to start to put some of that color into his eye. I usually like to tap a little bit of that color around the beak, and I'll put the line in for the separation of the beak at the same time. Now I'll darken it. Sometimes I darken it and add a little blue to it, especially on a bird of this color, orange, because blue is the complement, and we want the eye to really pop out here. So now I'm going to tap in some of that color but it's not going to, I don't want to eliminate all the other color I did. I just want to put in a little bit of that dark, leave some of the other areas there. Let's put in a smaller little point, just the point. Put in a little touch, little taps, a little touch of that color. Just little marks here. Let's just make that eye just a touch bigger. And if you eliminate some of that undertone or that first color like I just did, I'll just come back and touch into it again. Put a little bit more of that on there, okay? Now, what we'll do is we're going to come in. So we have that color that's in there. We could go a little bit more. And this is where I love to change the neutrals. I want to change the color a little bit. So I'll come over here, add a little red, maybe a little red and violet, right in between these two here, okay? And that might be just a touch too much, so I'll go back to some orange right in here. And so what I'm looking for is all of this variation of this tone that you see right up here. So you can see on my brush, I have it for that top part of the head there, slightly different. And that's where I start to just take a few marks of that. See, it's just a slightly different neutral color. Just a little bit more of a, and you can see just barely changes that tone. And this is what makes a beautiful artist, is they look for little areas just to change that first tone just a bit. That's going to make it a little bit prettier here. Get a few more little colors, and then I'll work that tone in just a few other areas because I like to travel the tone a bit. So I'll work at a few areas here, just a few little marks of it, and get that color in there. So now you see the bird's getting just a little more color to him, okay? Now let's come in and we'll look right into this particular area here. It's more yellowish, more of a yellowish, almost more of a yellowish green kind of color. So I'll come up here, grab some orange here, maybe just a tiniest bit of blue into that. And see, that is that particular color right there, see? That's it right there. And so some of you beginners will not see that slightly greenish, and it also depends on your monitor too, your monitor that you're looking at. But what's most important is that, you see the bird, you're starting to see the bird coming in these colors. And what's most important is that you're going to put a slightly different tone right up here, and I'm just going to put a mark or two of that, a little heavier, paint just some short marks of it right up there where I see it on the bird right up there, which is what he has in there. And I might want to put a mark or two in a few other places here, and just again to carry some of that tone, maybe just a whisper. This is what I like to do too, is I'll whisper it and then just take it out a little bit, just to push, and you can kind of see an underglow of that right in there. And that's what I'm looking for, that underglow. I haven't put the light color in yet. I'm just looking for some underglow and some glow of that color. Maybe a little mark of it right down here. Pull that down. And yeah, and you can see some of that right down in here. Right into his wing feathers and stuff. You can start to see some of that there. And, the sea. You see me talking about seeing all the time. I run an online class called The Art of Seeing, and I paint landscapes and portraits and animals and flowers, everything in there, westerns, and the whole class is geared around getting your eye to see. If you can see it, you can paint it. And that comes with time, but that comes with variety. Like a lot of people always say, I want to paint roses with you all the time. Yes, you're the greatest at roses. I want to see you paint roses. That's good, okay? But to learn roses, you have to learn to see. And to learn to really see, you have to paint other things. Because other things that, like an ocean, like the last lesson, seeing some of the blues into that ocean and how those blues change. If you don't paint that, you don't teach your eye how to see, okay? And so it's all about teaching yourself how to see. And it's very, very important that you paint all kinds of things. Now, we'll come up into the fun color. So now we've got basically, you have to get rid of the white of that bird and start seeing what it is that you're seeing. Now we'll take some of these colors back up a little lighter. into the whites here. Like this is a beautiful tone that is really that tone. You can see it's that tone that's right in there on him. And I might, because it's acrylic, lighten it up just a bit. You can poke into a little extender to keep it wet. But I always tell my students that's a little dangerous because if it's wet, you'll keep using it and using it everywhere. And that is not really what we want. And I'm going to come right back up over here and I'm going to take that light stroke. I'm using the chisel of the number 4 here. So he's a sparrow, so he's got a lot of small little color marks. So you can use a small brush or just turn your brush kind of on the side here. So I use the chisel and I'm doing some small marks like this so I get a little bit of movement. No more than 3 in each area, but I want to have a little bit of movement here and a little bit of contour following shapes. And I like to blur the lines a bit. Let's pull this out along his tail here a bit like that. Okay, and also I see that tone. I see that tone coming right in here with some of his wing feathers. Right in here, I see the way directly, see the way that they're pulling. I lighten the pressure on the brush, and this is that fusion. This is where I like it to just drag a bit. I don't want to cover up all my other colors underneath there. I just lighten the pressure, not too much paint there, and just kind of drag it a bit there. And push that tone on. Let's push some of that. Now we got to watch our angles. We got to pull back this way so his head will turn. We'll push another larger light mark right there. Kind of see it right there. Gets a little bit of that tone. Tap a little bit of this. You could use your small brush for this too. But I love the painterly look that comes from the 4 here. The 4 flat here. It comes out around like that, okay? And look for the tone. So there'll be a light tone, but you see when you start to break up the tones, when you look at an area that's right here, you'll see that there's a lighter area of it and then there's a slightly darker area of it. So I might just take this tone and know that I'm going to come back and lighten it again with another mark, a little bit later. Just a little bit of color here. Okay. Now, so you'll see me in all of the Painted Simply lessons. I'll paint wet into wet. I'll paint alla prima dry, like what I'm doing here. This is dry painting. The tones are dry. I'm working one tone right on top of the other, and it's dry. And so you'll see me paint all different kinds of ways. Now, I'm going to go more over towards a violet, lightening this up. More over towards a black, gray, and a violet, maybe a little bit of blue. Let's see, and see that is, and I see those particular tones coming up right up in here. So this is the kind of tone that I'm going to see right up in as I'm coming into the lighter areas right up here. So this is a good tone. Let's lighten it up just a bit. We can poke in a little extender so it's white, a little bit of my orange, but then I take it to a black and a little bit of the blue as well in here and a little bit of the violet. But it's a lighter, almost violet kind of tone here. And this is what's going to start to build here his shoulder. We'll push that right here into his shoulder there, okay? And let's take a little bit down his breast here. So we're going from oranges that lean towards a little bit greenish in some places until it leans a little bit violet here into some places here. Let's put a mark or two of that right up here underneath his chin here. We can put some smaller marks in there just like that to start that look there. And a mark of this. Now watch your direction. This time it's going to go in like this so his head turns. We can cover just a bit of that shoulder shadow there, but his head will start to turn. Your mark, the direction of your mark, in decorative painting we called it the stroke, but the direction of your mark is what's going to make that bird, his head turn or whatever you see. Let's go a touch lighter, maybe even back to just a touch of both of these together. This is something I like to do. I won't just keep going lighter with that. I'll go back to a slightly different tone. Maybe add a little bit of this orangey kind of color here. And we'll lighten that up again with some smaller little marks. Here, and I like to push with my finger. If you don't like to push with your finger, you could use a brush, just another brush here, and push some of this. I like the feeling of the number 4. It gives me a painterly look without, you could take a small brush in there and go do a whole bunch of small marks. But the number 4 gives me a painterly look. I see the mark, I see the stroke, and I like that. So we'll push that down. So I start to get that light color in him there. Okay. Let's just, and you see I'm just adding just a touch more light here. There we go. And see, my strokes are not, when you see me paint down, my strokes are very, very accurate, and my marks are very accurate, and the detail is perfect. When I paint with the longer brush, the whole thing relaxes. And, I can work it a little bit better just by this, setting my hand down a bit more and working that. And, and I control that. I control that by resting my hand. I control the look, and that's going to come to you as you decide how it is you want to paint, more casual or more controlled and more realistic. Here, I'm just going to lighten up a bit more. And use your rest, though. If you want to make more realistic marks, use your rest so you can do that. Now, let's just take a bit of that light. Down here on his coverts here, we have these little tiny marks. And so I just use a chisel here. And I don't like to use, I use a small brush. I show you in many videos how to use a small brush. But I like the inconsistent marks of the chisel of the brush that makes it more painterly. So I'm going to put those on here. Not quite so light. Let's just slide up here and grab. Let's just dirty that up a bit. Nice neutral, dirty, right up here by the top part of the wing here. See, and it's that slight, see how that tone just slightly changes, and that's what makes him look really nice. Let's put in a little bit more of a grade, kind of, something along this line, right back in here as well. I can add more tones later if I decide, but usually when I paint a bird like this and I want him really, really painterly and stuff, I simplify marks. So the more marks you put on, the more super realistic he becomes and the less painterly he becomes. So, but now you can kind of see that a little bit. We'll take kind of this grayish here. Now, if you want to reconstitute this, see, this is dry, okay? You can hear me rub it, it's dry. If you want to reconstitute and say, oh, I want that tone again, you can mix it again, or you can add a little bit of water and take it right back up again. So now it is all wet, and there's that tone again, okay? You can do that for a couple hours with the Heritage acrylics. They're not necessarily gone, okay? So I can use that tone again. And I can just lightly drag this, just lightly drag it a little bit over some of that shadow, just like that, and push that shadow back. And you get that area again, see? And maybe a bit more light. So water is your solvent, guys, for acrylics. Water is your solvent. And if your acrylics can't do that, not all acrylics can do that. And if your acrylics can't do that, then you have to just mix again. Or change acrylics. That's just all there is to it. Some acrylics are, and I've designed some acrylics to go very quickly, to dry very quickly. So I'm going to put a couple more light marks right in here, a bit more, so it comes forward, just the chisel of the brush here. Just a couple more light little marks here, just like that. I like that. We'll just blur that edge. I like to take my finger and run it against the edge so that it blurs it. It's called a lost edge, okay? Blurs it. Now, this is kind of dried right back here. Let me show you. You could use the chisel of that brush, or you can use your number 4 again. What's the main color you see in there? Kind of an orange. Let's get an orange. Let's drop that orange right in here. Boy, that's just lucked out, that nice violet we had in there. That's just about what that is. Just a little more orange. Let's get a bit more orange here. We'll just mix this up, get a lot of paint here. That's pretty close. It could be a touch more to the reddish orange here. And again, I tried to just come close. So that's that color I'm looking at right in there, and that's pretty darn close. And so what I do now, and you'll see me in all the bird books, I call this negative painting. We paint back towards the tip of the white, taking out the white here and putting in, leaving just the tips of the feathers there, okay? You control that. Let's put in a little bit more dark, maybe take a few small marks of the dark, slightly darker, and you control how much you take out there of the tips of those little wings there. That's up to you. Now you can use this in reverse too. You can take a little bit of that light and just come back in there and touch in a little bit of light. That's all up to you for how much detail and stuff that you want to get. But I love to put on the light and then take it out with the dark. I find better control that way. But we're all a little different. Okay, so you can do different things, you know, with it. We can all do different things here. But now look at all the neutrals we got. That's what's really kind of cool. Let's take just a bit of water here. So and let's put in the other part of the tip of that wing over there. We'll put a bit of this dark right into the tip of this one. Right in there like that. And a couple marks here of the light color. Underneath here on his tail there, that's pretty good. And maybe, and I usually when I paint the tail like this, I like to blur it off because I like that lost edge. I'm a big believer in lost and found edges there. Okay, so now look at all the tones. Now for a beginner, yeah, that's not easy. It's not easy getting all that tone, and it's probably going to take you another time to get it, okay? And your palette should look like this with your lighter tones and your darker tones. Control your palette. It shouldn't all be one color there. Control your palette, okay? So that you're mixing your colors there. You know, you can see the differences in your color. Now, let's just take that dirty brush and some light color here. Let's come back. This is where I like to paint in reverse, pulling down. This is what really gives you, if you want a lot of detail, this is what really gives you a lot of detail into your bird. So we can put some of those lighter marks here to create that other little band of feathers in there if we want. We can pull a bit of this light up a touch higher here, right up there. We can, it's not pure white. I have a little bit of tone in it. I don't paint with pure white, hardly at all. Only in the last part of the painting do I ever do something like that. So there's a little bit of that in there, okay? Maybe light, tap it into some of this gray so you get some modeling of the color so it's not pure white. Let's just add a couple more marks of that. A few other little areas. I like to whisper this right across the wing like you see there where his body feathers are setting up and over his wing, which sets that in. And my paint's a little dry, so I'm going to add a bit of water to it so it slides easier. You could use extender as well. That's just to make that, and barely touching the surface. Just whisper that over and you'll put a few little light feathers right up over his wing. Sometimes I'll come in and put a few little marks like this, especially into the shadow area, because that just helps you with the look of feathers and stuff in that area. You can do it in reverse too if you forgot something like I did right up here. There's a few little marks right up in here. And so I can go push them back in with some dark like that, okay? And then go back and set the light back up on top. Let's go a little bit lighter, some of our gray tone here. And just paint, I paint backwards. I paint down over the mark there, setting that mark into the bird there, okay? So you can see, you know, there could be a little bit more of the reddish orange in there, colors and stuff before we go up onto his head here. Reddish orange to him. In some of that, it's a beautiful kind of reddish orange right up in here. I can have a that might be a bit bright, needs a little bit more red, or a little bit of violet. Don't forget that violet is wonderful colors. And I just get way too much of that sometimes. Here we go. That is the color right in there. So I'm just going to add a bit of that right in there. Yeah, and you can see I could increase that just a touch. Let's change it just a bit. Maybe a bit of our black into that too. Change that. That's too much, Dave. Kind of, there we go. And maybe a few little marks of that right in there. And you don't have to, you beginners and stuff, you don't have to do all of this. But I would like you to try on some of it because it does teach your eye. And I'm just going to put a few little bits of it here and there that I see on him, because that just adds just a little bit more to him, okay? All right. And that's the goal. It's just, the goal here is to start to see, yes, I know he's a complicated bird. And yeah, we could have started out easier, but this is a great lesson to see your eye. And you're going to have to repeat this lesson, okay? Yeah, you're going to have to repeat this lesson. And try coming at it a different way, you know? And let's take a little bit of light right up here. Let's pull that down. Now before I do this mark, there's a very important mark here. And I want to point this out to you and I point it out to all my bird painters. I have an entire course called the S101 Art of Painting Birds on our online classes. And it's something I point out on every bird that you paint in there. This face is foreshortened. And so his beak does not stop at the edge of his head here. There's a tiny bit of dark over here on the other side. So this light band that I'm about to put on here comes down and is going to line up with the center of his beak there, okay? Now, on that other side of him is going to be a little bit, you can pick up the tiniest little bit of dark right over here. And that is extremely important, because that foreshortens his face and turns it. Otherwise, his beak is just going to be stuck on to the edge of his, to the edge of him there. So you've got to, I look for that in every bird that I paint up. This is a little dry right here, so I'm going to add some water to loosen it up, just so I can use that tone and lighten that up. That's a good tone right in here. So I look for that. Look for that extra little dark right over there. It's so very important on the bird. We'll have a bit of that light that's going to come right up over here, right up towards his eye ring, the ring on his eye. We'll go a touch lighter here. A little mark of lighter color right in there for him. There we go. And there is that little bit more of a light mark, but I don't want to get it too much into a copy mode here. I want him to be a little bit painterly, okay? So I have that one. I could have that beautiful kind of orangish color in here. And, you know, this is where you just put little touches and marks of those in there and start getting some of those tones. There's a bit of that light. Point your brush up, wipe your brush. Point your brush up, and you notice now I'm crouching down onto my brush, onto the thing. This is what the short handle brushes do. Crouch down, get your mark real low right in here, and you can add a few of the little tiny feathery strokes. Very easy if you want to get more towards that realism. And that's very easy to add that way right in there. Those are a little too perfect, but very easy to add. And I will do that now as I work on his eye ring. This is the lower eye ring here. Tiny bit more light color I'll put on the lower eye ring here. Okay. And then a tiny, tiny, tiny line up above the top. And sometimes I just tap it so it's not a perfect line. So I just tap it. And then what I'll do is I'll redress into some dark tone. Doesn't make a difference what, just some, and then just kind of pull through, tap through that ring and set it into his face a little bit more. So now his face is set up there a bit. And you can use don't use white, use a lower gray color here to put the catch light on the top of his eye up there. And you can, I'm going to rinse that out of my brush. I always like to, I'm going to go with a little red and black here. And a little darker color. I always like to set the eye back in with a, tap that around some places here to, and I'll tap into that catch light till I get the catch light exactly the way I want it to look here. Maybe a little darker, longer, right down there. Tiny little marks that I'm doing there. Okay, so we have that, and then some of this kind of gray. Let's take some black and white and some orange right in here. Oh boy, that's that beak. That's the, that just got lucky. It's a gray and orange. That's this beak color that I'm looking at right in here. And we'll push some of that into his beak. Right in here on the upper and the lower. Leave a bit of that shadow line that we first put in. Leave that. And some of that color, be beautiful to take out here to get some of this other softer look out and around his eye a bit here as well. Some of this sideways movement here. You see a little bit of the sideways movement there into his face. Here, I've got this, and I'm going to take some of that, maybe just a touch more orange right up here and build that curvature a bit more. Here, follow, there we go, right like that. And yeah, so let's get now back to a little bit of light color, and we'll put the smaller little marks right up here towards his beak. Small little marks. And of course, how much you're going to do in there, that's all up to you. He has a lighter little color here, little gray, little light, where the light is hitting on the top of his beak here. Now, usually I'll go in and add some background before I start to do all this, but we'll just go ahead and do it because we need to practice anyway. And a little bit of gray right in here. A little bit of gray right in there. Okay. And so a bit more of this light right here. Let's just add a mark or two right in there. Angled that way. Angled towards that turned head there. Like that. And he does have this slightly secondary kind of look. But you might want to, I just blur it slightly with my, I like the painterly look. So I tend to, if I start to get too perfect, I like to blur those out. I like to blur those lines out a bit. So maybe a little bit medium tone in there. That's pretty good. And then I kind of lost the top. I'm going to go more, a little bit more reddish orange and maybe some, and gray it up. Slightly different. I'm not looking for the same tone, but it's going to be, supposed to be more towards the violet side here. So let's get that on. This is kind of important, so I'm just going to pull it a few times down and put that dark in that makes the band on his head there. And it could be just a half a value darker here, like this. And so I'm pulling in reverse, just little marks, just tapping it in there. Now, I don't want to get him too super realistic, but that puts him in just a bit more there, okay? Now, there's other little areas that I kind of lost, and I'll just go, and I just go back and put them back in. They're under there, they're just buried. So I'm just going to add this little band right back up in here, heading towards that eye here. Maybe a few little marks of that. And if it's too dark, just add a little orange or something over it there. You know, there's, you know, and I'm going to be specific with you guys here because I want to teach you to see. And, you know, some of the things that I'll do, I'll make a decision right now. Do I want to concentrate on it? Because the more I concentrate on it, the stiffer he becomes and the less painterly. So, you know, it's like right in here. Do I leave that just as a light and dark expression there? Or do I take my brush and just lighten it up a bit right in there to get him a little closer to what he is in the other painting? And that's that's decisions that you make that is going to be basically it's going to be a reflection of your style, of how you're going to paint, is what you let go and what you correct. That's going to be a decision of what you do right there. So overall, I mean, he's an interesting little guy here. I could drag some of that dark down. Do you see it? There's a little bit more dark right down in there than what I have on mine there. And, that's the thing is, do you let it go? So there's certain things that I let go, but I might put just a touch more right in there. He's a sparrow, and the sparrows I got a ton of these outside here. They just love this place. So here we go. So we have your choice here. Let's put a bit of a orangish, dirty oranges here. We'll just give a whisper here for his legs, because we're going to put him perched on some stuff, and we're going to do those daisies here. So now I'll look down and say, okay, you can look at certain areas here. This is where I talk about letting go. I like his kind of look that he has here. He has a little bit more of a medium, value 7 or so tone drawn down just a bit more. That is kind of important, so that you don't get a real light to dark look on him. So maybe we will just take our number 4 and a little bit of 7 and just drag that down a bit more. Right there, you can see that adds more light to the front of him. I could have a touch more of that light across him right up here. Now and see, I'll just use a small one. I'll just let that just kind of build right in there. So, yes, is it difficult? Yeah, this is it's not just a black and white bird, I don't want to teach you that way. I want to take a bird that causes you to do this to your palette. And like I say, that's the most important thing. See all these little tones? We're teaching our eye to see the difference. Are you going to get it first right away? No. You might get lucky, but no. It's just like teaching yourself to drive. It's just like teaching yourself to bake cookies. Just like you have to learn the oven and what altitude you are to get the right time to make the right perfect batch of cookies that don't always come out doughy like me. It's okay, I like doughy cookies. But it takes you a little bit, and so you just start. And so I'm going to just slide this a little darker right up here. This is what I like to do at the end of when I get him close, is I like to come in and just add other little things, taking out some of my sketch lines and stuff like that, and adding those little things to make him just a little bit better. A mark or two, or a lightness here. Widen this light color out just a bit more right in there. It gives this a little more volume to his face. And I'll look for those things. There. And he's really kind of a fun little bird. He has maybe just a touch more, tiny bit more light on the back of his eye ring there. If you're a beginner, will you see that right away? No. But that is something that your eye will develop. And it only develops when you try, and this is very important. Your eye only develops when you try difficult things. Remember that. Your eye only develops when you try difficult things. I get so many people that were like, okay, well, what you just taught us, that's really difficult. Of course it is. It should be, because that's how you learn. You try difficult things. You don't just paint something you can paint and expect your skills to improve. You paint something you can't do, you practice it, and then your skills improve. So you always reach beyond what you can do if you want to go up. Does that make sense? So if you can't paint it right away and you didn't get it once, then you go back and do it again. You didn't get it twice, go back and do it again. Reach a little higher, and you will be more successful in your learning. So I'm just adding just little touches of this other slightly gray tone. Sometimes I just like to do that because it's just fun. And it makes a nice little bird. So there he is there. I could develop right in here a little bit more. That dark mark is a little bit too dark up there. I could break that up a bit. I could bring out his beak a touch more if I wanted to. But right now he's pretty good for what I want him to be. That beak needs to have a impression of it being just a bit bigger though, because it's not quite there. So I'm just going to pull that gray again, that line of gray on the top and bottom again, and maybe just a touch of black for that slightly darker. See, it's a little different color than I used. I used the violets before. And bring that back out just a bit more. Could have another lighter little tone to the bottom. And again, this is starting to get really specific. I don't want to do that too much with you guys, but here we go. Now, all right, so let's decide here now. So I did them on a darker, slightly darker background. And so one of the things I do is I'm going to break him off of the background now, and I'm going to carry it down, and we're going to paint these daisies really quick. And so I like to go to the complement. So if I was up over here, we're going to go to a blue. So I was up over here, I'm going to head over here to the blues. Sometimes if I used a lot of violet in the bird, I'll go to a blue, blue, violet. But, you know, his complement that we were using a lot up here, right up in this red, orange and stuff, is down towards these blue greens. And so we'll take some phthalo and some light here. Let's go a touch lighter than we did the background. So we'll go up to a 7 to an 8 here. And I'm just going to, yeah, that's probably a little bit lighter here. And I'm going to, there we go. And what I like to do is negative paint. I'll paint back out and around a bit here, and I'll push in some of this color. Now I'm not going to push it everywhere. I'm just going to push this here onto a background. This is the contemporary look that I like. If you want to do it more, you can do that more. This is the contemporary look that I like. I might take maybe even a little bit lighter, slightly different stroke of it. Right down over here, just push that in here. Take my paper towel and push and pull that a bit, because I like to do that kind of stuff on the birds. And you know, you can, if you want to bring out that forward turning of the head here, you can put some more color in there. You know, but I like to wipe with the paper towel so I start to take off, and then I'll grab some of this, especially up into here if I'm going to paint these daisies. I like to do this is I'll grab a bit of that, and see, this is a compliment to him, and I know I just probably shocked a bunch of you. This is a compliment to him, so now he's standing out. See how that blue makes him stand out? Now we're going to cover most of that up, but you can see this is the one thing that I do when I paint is I loosen it up, and I make these marks, and it helps me see. And this is the casual look of the painting that I like to do. If you don't, you can do it a little bit more smooth. And this, what I do is I scrub and I lift the pressure and I hit little marks and I do little things here. And that is not easy to do, because when you're a beginner, you're afraid and you want to try to copy, or I want it to be just like Dave's, or I want to be just like Richard Smith or something like that, you know, and you'll be timid. And that will, but it will come. It'll come with time. I'm going to put a little bit more blue, maybe a blue and a tiny bit of red, which is going to cause this to gray. Remember we talked about that. Remember that gray color we made in that seascape with the blue and the red. And that's going to gray that down. And look at what that does for him is what when he stay out of his body. Don't worry, I'm a professional. I can fix that. A little paper towel and a little bit of water. That's called too casual right away. But leave a little bit of that blue there, because that really does do nice things for the lost edge of his body there. And happy accidents, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, so we have that blue, see, and it's carrying that down, and it's a nice contrasting color for him. I'm going to go over here to, if I can find, there it is, my bigger number 8 here. And we're going to take some of this orange color that we had, and we're just going to paint a few of these, few little daisies and stuff right in here, maybe one right down here. And so I carry his colors down, but I'm going to just kind of imagine the centers, where that daisy center is going to be. I'm not going to paint a whole bunch of them, just a couple of them, and then just kind of carry the color around a little bit. We have that nice orange. Let's get that a little bit more to that violet orange here. red, violet, yellow, a little bit of red. That red, violet, orange is real pretty too, that we used a lot into him, okay? Let's gray all of this. Let's get some beautiful grays. Let's grab a little black, a little bit of violet here. Those are beautiful grays. Let's add just a touch of white, see what that looks like. See, those are beautiful grays. We could yellow that a little bit. See, it warms it. See, it's kind of warm, almost towards a brown. And that's kind of pretty. And we'll push some of that color in and out here. Just push it in and out of that center. Imagine a daisy sitting here. Push in and out of that center here. Okay, maybe a little one right down there. Maybe just some color marks right out here that we can just say that those are going to be daisies there, okay? And the problem is see, I just do this, and for many years I did this, okay, because I'm learning. And you're going to do it too. If you're beginning, you're going to do that too. After you do a couple thousand daisies, you'll be able to go, okay? It will come. It will come. It always does. Okay, now I'm going to lighten up, and I usually change the tone a little bit, maybe a little bit more yellow here. So whenever I add a lot of white, I just don't want to make a light value of that. I want to change it a little bit. Okay, so let's pull in now. Let's just pull in some marks here for some blossoms pulling in. Now the color, so I started up here where I wanted that color the lightest. Now I'm going to lift the pressure, maybe even pull out just a little bit. I don't need petals everywhere around my daisy, okay? I just need a few. So I'm going to redress, pick up a bit more because I picked up some blue. I'll pick up a lighter one here. Just go touch and lift off and let the color now run out, and maybe just stroke a few pulling out this way, just like that. And churn your brush, use the chisel. Let's pick up a little bit more light, change the tone a bit here, maybe a bit more yellow here, and then just pull in and out a bit here, just like that. Let that flower just kind of change. Now that's a bit light and competing with the other one. Sometimes I'll do this, is I'll push in and out to take some of that light out just a bit, or redressing, and I can add some more orange and stuff back in there. And you'll see me do that a lot. Like, let me show you. Reach over here and show you that. See, that's how I paint these in here. I'll push back and forth several times, taking the color out. And that is, and that's a little more work. But I'll go back and forth, taking some of the colors back out. And I'll pick up more paint. The key to all this is how much paint you have in your brush too. I'm going to pick up some light and some yellow here and restroke that one there. Make the light color. I want the lightest one up by him, right up here. There we go. There we go, just like that. Now it's a bit big, so I'm just going to take it off just a bit. So I just push in right there and take it off, and see it removed that other tip, made that lost edge, picked up some of the background. And I don't need to have it perfect. It still reads as a daisy. You still see it as a daisy. It doesn't need to be perfect. And that's not an easy thing to do, because we always like to paint a little perfect. Okay, so now I'll just pick up some more. Maybe gray it just a bit with some of this in here. And let's just come in right there and hit that again. Hit that one again. Bit of that right in there. Bit more light, I think. And see, I'm controlling that on my brush here. There we go. Bit more light. And I can take some of that off. Push your eye right back in there to that one. Let's pick up some of this, model this in the brush so it's not pure white. So I'm going to tap in here, okay? And let's just add a real quick little turned one right back here. Right back like that. Okay, just a little turned daisy there. So what I do is I imagine the calyx, or the stem right there, and I'm pulling almost in a little V right down there towards it here. And sometimes putting on too much. But let's just add a smaller little stroke of white real quick. Boom. There we go. just like that. You take a little bit of that off. I like to paint that back and forth a couple times. Let's turn one, softer one right back here. Just imagine the center right there, and just turn one coming down like that. That's kind of pretty. Maybe just a whisper of some back here. Just the idea of those marks right there like that. And now, you can decide the type of daisy. You can revisit some of those center colors there. And what I mean is I just tap those out and around again, pushing those colors in and out here. And give just a little mark of that there. Here. I like the casual. I use the corner of the brush here. I just tap around and smear it around. And maybe a bit more of a browner yellow in there. That picks up, and I'm looking for some of the tones in him. See, so he carries, especially into the centers, carries some of his tones down there. Okay, we can make that bit of a darker, maybe even a darker green kind of color, maybe a little green and red there, so it's more of a brown, it's kind of brownish, and add some contrast to the center. Just tap it to the low side. Use the corner of your brush, just kind of tap, tap, tap. You can make calyxes with it, little ideas of stems and stuff there. Fun little things like that. Sometimes I do like to make a brown from green and yellow, so I'll make a blue and yellow and make a green, and then I'll add the red here, and then this gives you really nice browns. There's other browns that I talk about, making with the black and red too. But these work kind of well, kind of nice. Here, that's a kind of nice one. Maybe a stem or two working right up here. Just the chisel of your brush there, like that. Can't forget his legs too much, but something to kind of stand on there. Pull some of those colors through and out. There, like that. Okay, yeah, that's kind of neat. You can put green leaves, we've talked about those. You can, and remember with the first painting, we did kind of a yellow-green that's black. You get that olive green with a tiny bit of black, and the yellow, the Hansa Yellow, it's olive green. You can make it more of a green with a bit of the blue there, so you can make that one. There, you can kind of choose the greens, or you can mix them all together and make a few ideas of some leaves here. And don't take out all of your blue that we have in there, but you can see I can soften the look of the blue now with just a few marks of the green and change the way that looks even more here. Or you can go to a darker blue-green here, maybe even a bit of black, get them both in there, and just add a few other little shadows, more contrast. That's all up to you. You look at, this is contrast, so how much you do, that's up to you. If you don't like it, start to take your paper towel and start to wipe some of it out there. So you take some of that out and soften it back. You could take colors here and soften back some of that, put in some other little marks here. That's the wonderful thing that Schmid taught us. Richard Schmid, he was a beautiful painter, beautiful. And taught us how to carry these colors and do these really whimsical kind of looks and stuff to it, And it's all up to you. That's how much you're going to do. I'm going to go just a bit more on some of this daisy here. Just a bit more. A little bit bigger, a little bit softer here. Gives it, so you see I just stroke over it again. I'm using this kind of greenish gray here. Slightly different tone. And this is going to make him a little bigger, a little softer. And take away, not take away, but soften the look coming up against the bird here. And that's my choice. We're all different. We're all going to paint different. You decide what it is that you want to do. And but I'm grabbing. So since I did a lot with those kind of greenish tones, one of the things I like to do, and you see me in all my classes, I always say, take those tones into your flowers. That's how you make prettier flowers. You should take those tones, start reading those tones and taking them into your flowers. Now, let's give the nice bright spark that is the daisy here of the yellow. Just a corner of my brush and Hansa Yellow here. Let's just tap some into this one here. And that gives that nice spark of the daisy. And let's take Hansa Yellow and a little bit of white here. Okay. Tap that in. And I usually put this onto the top side, which is the light side here. So, and just tap a little bit, not one spot. Tap it around a little bit, but don't go everywhere all the way around the center so that you make a light and dark. And if you get too much, just take some of your reds, greens, some of those beautiful colors, and just tap through and take some of that out again. Just a bit. There, kind of like that. That kind of look to it. Now, this is the thing. I'm going to let's step the camera back just a bit here. Okay. So I've got this right here, and it just, that shadow is just kind of following it there. I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is just take some of my blue. Let's even put some of this green, maybe a bit of this red in there. And let's just pull some of that down a bit here. And this is up to you. That might be too cool. I don't know. Let's see. And yeah, I'd like to see probably some of his tone in there. So what was his tone? More orange. Let's get more orange into that. Just leave that with some orange and pull some of that down. Yeah, that's better. See that? It doesn't, it helps join the painting, not pull it right in half there. So, and that's what I'm looking for. See that his tone now travels across over there. Now you could put some lighter leaves right here. I could, yeah, okay, I get that done. Maybe I need a lighter yellow-green little leaf there. Let's get some green, some yellow-green. Let's put just a couple marks of lighter green right in there and see what that does for us here. Because we can always take it out. We're professionals. We can do anything we want. And that's a little bit different, see? Let's put just a touch of that right over here by him. Here. And I'm not even going to do perfect leaves. I'm just going to kind of leave it like that. And it's a balancing act of color. You know, it's a balancing act of color. I'm going to take a bit of this right out over here because I want to soften that edge just a bit. Let's just pull down and soften that. And this is the thing. So I like to do that, and some of you may or may not like to do that. And if you want to do that even more and you want it softer, what's your solvent? Water, right? So I'm going to take a wet paper towel here and pull through. And so you can even see some of my original daisy mark right there that I'll just pull through here until I get the softness. Now I took off too much. So I get the opportunity to do that again here. I'm just going to pull that down. I might even push that up into the daisy and let that daisy just kind of disappear into that there. I kind of like that as well. But that's how you get it back and forth. And this is where I love to paint like this and experiment and try things here, you know, with paintings. And sometimes you're lucky that you hit it right away. And sometimes you experiment. And one of the things, and that experimentation is what we call creativity, okay? You try. Sometimes you fail. You do it again. It's a board and a little bit of paint. We used about 5 cents worth of paint today in painting this painting. And I have a ton more paint left out here. I can do a ton more of these, okay? So it's a board and a little bit of paint, and you have some fun with it and try some different things. One of the things I was just looking at, I have this monitor right here. You see me look at it every once in a while. That's the painting sitting at 8 feet, because I like to paint everything for our gallery at 8 feet. And I see at 8 feet, I would love to have some of that little blue splashed through there, that you pick that up again, right in there like that, see? So it pulls that blue down through. You can even have a splash of that blue right there onto those daisies right inside. That's the real casual, alla prima that I like, that happens, that you see that pulling through like that. So there you go. There's an idea of it. Now, in all of that, I thought his breast area there was wonderful. Now it's kind of diminished a bit, so I always go back. I always tell you, go back to the bird. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do it slightly this lighter green, and I'm going to put a couple tone strokes of that lighter. It looks orangish there, but it's the leaf color a bit. And I'm going to bring his breast area up just a touch more right in here, because he's my bird and I want to do it a little bit lighter here, right in there like that, so he stands just a bit more forward. Let's put the edge of this, maybe the edge of this daisy out just a bit here. Here we go. So it comes up, and see, it comes up in front of him. And that's the edge. See, I just rolled the brush over and made a nice drawing edge. And then it sits against his lost part of his shadow, and it comes forward. That's very important. Those are things that we're going to study later on quite a bit, called the lost and found edges. Very, very important, watching your edges. We'll do that in other lessons. Matter of fact, we have a landscape coming that I'm going to be doing some of that with you, okay? So there you go. There's an idea of that, kind of a fun little painting. And you can do, you can carry the background more. You can lighten up through the background. I kind of like that. Let's see what it looks like here. So we can see what that looks like right there when you drop that into a frame. He'll be nice. That'll be a nice painting there. Okay, be a nice painting. Could have just a touch more light up there. I won't do it. But he could have a touch more light up there. So it gives you an idea. So working through the color neutrals, guys, those are so important to training your eye. The neutrals are going to help you train your eye more than anything else. Is that kind of a bluish? Is it kind of a greenish? Is it kind of orangish kind of color? And then learning how to neutralize it with this complement. But is it going to slide up kind of reddish to that or greenish to that? So this is a good one. So try some of the neutrals. And we're going to paint some of these neutrals into some roses and stuff later on. We'll paint them into clouds, into landscapes. So painting all of these elements. I know I have students out there that just say, I want to learn the roses, Dave. Okay. But if you paint a cloud, you'll paint a better white rose. As soon as I learn how to talk to you guys, you really do. And it's fun to try some of these things, okay? All right. There you go. If you have any kinds of questions, make sure you drop them into the comments below. Make sure you click like on that, because that helps our videos when you guys do that. Click like. And make sure that you're all subscribed. We have links over in the video description for everything I do. Jessica is adding it all to our paintedsimply.com website. So you'll be able to go there, read about the colors, the brushes, all that kind of stuff. And they have deals over there for you as well. To make, if some of you are thinking about purchasing the paints and stuff like that. Don't just go out there and buy a whole bunch of paints. Write our studio, talk to them, and they'll give you some discounts and some things and all that kind of good stuff. They're really good at that. We want everybody to paint, because painting is fun. Okay? Alrighty. I'll see you guys on the next one. In just a couple of days, we're going to do a landscape and maybe even a cloud with some neutrals. I'll see you then.